more Republicans are pushing back against critical race theory. Not a new idea, but in recent weeks, we've seen more and more Republicans use quotes by Dr. King in order to justify why they don't agree with critical race theory. It's something that is causing a lot of controversy for the King family, and we'll hear from the daughter of Dr. King coming up. But first, I want you guys to hear in context exactly how Republicans are using quotes by Dr. King to justify why we should not be using critical race theory across America. Take a listen.
As the Reverend Dr. King famously said, and he was right, we should judge our fellow citizens by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Mr. President, we need a strong nation with strong citizens who see each other as Americans, not as oppressors or oppressed.
Critical race theory goes against everything Martin Luther King has ever told us. Don't judge us by the color of our skin. And now they're embracing it, right? They're going backwards.
So using the quote to not judge a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That quote by Dr. King is one that has been used often in the Black community to justify why we should be judged by who we are and not by the fact that we're Black. And now that is actually being used by white Republicans to defend why they don't want to move forward with critical race theory being taught in schools. Very interesting dynamic that's playing out here. And it's one that really has the daughter of Dr. King not only upset, but hurt. Take a listen to what she had to say when she was asked about how Republicans are misquoting her father.
How does it feel for you as his daughter to hear his name invoked in defense of refusing to teach history?
You know, that's why I always say, do not take excerpts from my father. Study him holistically. There is a lot. He wrote extensively. That's the beauty of all of this. No matter what people try to say, there are books out, and I thank God we just did a new publishing deal, so there are going to be more books out and more writings so that the record will continue to be straight. Yeah. And I thank God that he was able to write like this, because for people to be able to misappropriate him this way is actually beyond insulting.
So, Ben, Dr. Mack, this makes me ask myself, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where Dr. Martin Luther King is being quoted by white Republicans in order to push their agenda?
It's exactly what you said. You know, when you want to take something out of context, and in this case, his I Have a Dream speech, which was given to the larger population, they became familiar with it. And on August 23rd, 1863, during the March on Washington. But when you go inside the entirety of the speech, Dr. King absolutely scratched the moral consciousness of America. So let's just take today. One of the big issues that we're seeing with the Republican Party is voter suppression. And in that very same speech, Dr. King said the following: "We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote, and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing to vote for." Then he comes down and he says this in regards to police brutality: "I'm not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and the staggering winds of police brutality." So in that sense, if you get inside of Dr. King's writings, and I'm talking all of them, that says they simply want to focus on I Have a Dream, and they want to not even focus on the entirety of the speech, but take that one line. Dr. King was saying, yes, I'm looking forward to that day when my children would not be judged by the color of their skin, by the contents of their character. The question remains, Republican brothers and sisters, is that day today? 58 years later, is that day today? And what we heard Sister King say is that that day is not today. And yes, indeed, she is insulted by it.
Absolutely. I'm looking at this. Georgia, you asked the question, how did we get here? I look at what the game, I look at the game that is being played by conservatives when they use this technique. And it's actually a technique that I call, actually, I didn't coin it. Missy Elliott did. They like to flip it and reverse it. And what they've done is they've taken the argument that we use for equality and they flipped it and they reversed it on us. And now they're saying, OK, in order to make sure that you don't actually get any progress, Black people, what we're going to do is make sure that we use the very words of your liberation against you. And so now they've gentrified. They've done what they do. They gentrified and colonized the civil rights language in order to flip it on us, in order to stop us from getting any progress. It is a masterstroke of propaganda, and they've been doing it for years.
You know, and if you listen to that entire interview that Joy Reid did with Dr. King's daughter, another thing that she pointed out, Joy Reid, was the fact that there was an article that came out included transcriptions from a speech Dr. King never even got to do. And he basically was talking about America being hell. And it was a speech he was supposed to give a Sunday after he was assassinated. And so it also makes me think about, you know, did I integrate my people into a burning house? Yes. It makes me think about so many other things that Dr. King has said. And the fact that out of everything, you're going to take this one quote and misappropriate it. Like, let's put that quote in context. Dr. King was not talking about white people. He wasn't talking about white people. And so keep it in context. If you're going to quote a legend, if you're going to quote a peace icon, if you're going to quote one of our most treasured scholars, keep it in context. You know, and so it's frustrating to see Republicans use this in this way. And a lot of times I start to ask myself questions. I always approach these conversations by doing internal reflection. And even thinking about Dr. King and him saying this, what if he never said that? What if he never positioned that thought into the world or articulated our struggle in that way? White people would have been okay with continuing to exist in America, where the normal was to judge us by the color of our skin and not by the content of our character. If Dr. King never even framed that our experience in that way, there's a potential that we could still be living in those conditions. And so it is beyond insulting that they would use this quote to defend the fact that they want to abolish critical race theory, which really just highlights not that quote for them, but that quote for us.
You know, but again, Georgia, if one were to get inside of critical race theory, and the very document, and it's not even a document, it's not even the entirety of the speech, it is that one line. That speech in and of itself would absolutely shame America. You know, when Dr. King says, it is obvious today that America has defaulted on a promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. So if we were to ask the question, what promissory note? He's talking about the promissory notes laid out in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in that preamble. All men are created equal. Let us create a more perfect union. Because in a critical way of thinking, one would ask the Republicans, are all men treated equally in this country? Is this a more perfect union when you're trying to suppress the vote? Because in that speech, he talked about voter suppression. Is this a fair and equal country when it comes to police conduct? Again, if so, then explain Tamir Rice, explain all of these police killings that's going on. So even if you were to take critical race theory and just simply apply it to just that one speech, let alone all the other writings that Dr. King has done, it would absolutely be shameful to him. So for me, I love the fact that Dr. King said it. I'm glad he said it, as I'm sure you are. But if we got inside the critical race theory, since they want to take this man and his words and that one line, let us take the entirety of that speech, which is what we as Black folk have to do. We have to understand the teachings of this powerful man and his thoughts about America. And then once we understand it, every time they go to that line, we'll now take that very same speech and now give them the rest of that speech in its entirety. And it's at that point that you diffuse it. But if we don't know the speech, if we don't know what Dr. King stood for, we don't understand his legacy, then we too are trying to defend that one sentence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can't be stated any better than that. Only thing that I would add, Brother Mack, when you mentioned, you're mentioning the language and you were alluding to the language in the Constitution as well, right? These are the things that this country tells us. These are the documents that they tell us that we are going to abide by. And we've seen them anytime that we have found a way to use those documents. You've referenced Thurgood Marshall so many times of how he leveraged those constitutional documents to get liberation. What we're seeing now is an evolution in white supremacy, such where they're saying, well, if you're going to use the Constitution against us, if you're going to use language, if you're going to use the language that Dr. King used against us, we're willing to just completely ignore the actual context of all of those documents, of all those speeches, of everything in order to maintain our political and economic power. We saw that on January 6th. When they marched up the steps of the Capitol, they said, we no longer care about the language that's in any of those documents. And if they're willing to just burn the Constitution in order to satiate their desire for power, then they're certainly willing to co-opt the language of Dr. King.
But one of the things that is absolutely beautiful and very powerful. See, it's one thing for Sister Ford, for you and me to come here and say it's insulting what you're doing with the words and the wisdom of Dr. King. It's one thing for the three of us to do it. But for baby girl, for the daughter of the king to say it does not get any more powerful. And a slap in the face, a punch in the face back to the Republicans for her to say it. And I just applaud that sister for stepping up and saying it. Absolutely do not use my daddy. Because see, it's one thing for us, it's Dr. King. For her, it's her daddy. Don't use my daddy to spew your rhetoric and your philosophies of white superiority. Don't do it.
Yeah. And I want to circle back. The speech he was supposed to deliver, the title of it is Why America May Go to Hell. That was a speech he was supposed to give the Sunday after he was assassinated. And obviously he never got to deliver that speech. But, I wonder also what is going through the mind of these Republicans. Do they think that by quoting Dr. King or any Black community leader that is respected, that they are gaining any more credibility with their arguments? Because it feels passive aggressive, and it feels very intentional that they would not only stand up and fight against teaching critical race theory, but then weaponize the words of a Black community leader to try to prove their point. And so clearly we're not buying it. Are Republicans buying it? Are conservative Democrats buying it? Or are people across the board seeing this as face value? It's very distasteful. It's one thing, have your opinion, feel how you want to about critical race theory. That's fine. It says more about you than it does about me. Have your thoughts on that. That's great. But to weaponize the words of Dr. King in order to try to prove your point.
Well, Georgia, again, when you take a look at the totality of our experience in this country, and again, we've talked about it over and over again, and of course, critical race theory is at the core of this. White folk don't know that history like we, they don't know our experience in this country holistically no more than we do. And those few who do know it, yes, indeed, and what makes them effective in weaponizing it is because the masses of us as a people, Black folk, because we don't know our history, our experience, which is why I'm going to continuously pound the drums on that. Because when you want to talk about Dr. King's talking about America and holding America at check, I'll tell you what I consider his absolute most powerful speech is a speech entitled The Drum Major Instinct. And in that, he talked about, that there is something innate in man that makes man want to be first. And he says there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be first in love, if you want to be first in clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, that's a good thing. But when that instinct becomes first because you want to be first in racial superiority, that's a problem. So not only does he talk about this instinct inside of man, he talks about it inside of a nation. And when he talks about it inside of a nation, he points his venom, his criticism directly at America in her participation in the Vietnam War and how she's treating us as a people. So, if you want to go to King, I love the fact, let him go to King, but then let us, who understands King's ideology, who understand his philosophy, who understands his writing, let us sit at the table and let's have that discussion about Dr. King and what he said.
And Sister Georgia, real quick, isn't this what gaslighters do? Isn't this what manipulators do? Isn't it the fact that they will always take and pick what they want out of a passage? I mean, they do this to Dr. King. They don't try it often with Malcolm X, but if they could, they definitely try it. They even do this with religion. And they will intentionally focus on the passages of scripture that help justify slavery historically and ignore all of the scripture that tells us about setting the people free in the year of Jubilee and liberation. This is what gaslighters do in order to maintain political and economic power.
Absolutely. Well, I want to move on, but I do want to approach this next conversation with some compassion. There's a Black state rep by the name of John Thompson, who has recently been going through a lot of things publicly in the media. He is a friend of Philando Castile, who was killed by police 5 years ago in Minnesota. And a lot of you may remember the footage of Philando Castile's, the aftermath of his death, because it was live streamed by his then girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds. And so John Thompson was a friend of Philando Castile. And, the one thing that I really admired about this brother is the fact that he was very, traumatized by what happened to Philando Castile and very angry and did what he could to demand justice. And what it did was it propelled him to run for office. And so there are a lot of people who stand up and say that they want change, but there are not a lot of people who get activated and learn the political game or try to go campaign, get votes, put in the work, and get elected into office so that now you're in a position to actually advocate for the change that you want to see. And so he's been a champion of police accountability. And he's been very vocal, especially after George Floyd now, and using his position and being outspoken to try to, push for change. Well, recently what we've seen is he was at a rally. He talked about a police stop. He got pulled over. He said that he was racially profiled. And immediately when he talked about that experience, the media started digging to try to find the police footage from his traffic stop so that they could investigate whether or not he had been racially profiled. In doing so, they also discovered that he had presented a Wisconsin ID. And we'll take a look at the footage because it has surfaced. So we'll look at that. But he presented Wisconsin ID, and it turns out that he had a suspended license. And also the other piece was potentially his license was suspended from not paying child support. And so now this has turned into the officials here launching an investigation, trying to get him removed from his position, saying that he, questioning if he's even a Minnesota resident because he presented the Wisconsin ID. So there's a lot of different components here. We're going to do our best to break it down. But before we do, I want you guys to take a look at this footage so you can have more context about what exactly happened.
Is there audio?
Why such a hurry?
I don't think I took off like a bat out of here. I just drove off.
Okay. You got your proof of insurance with you?
I do. It's in my phone.
All right.
I'm actually the current state representative in this district right here, man. If that makes any difference.
You got a Wisconsin license?
Yeah, it's a Wisconsin license. I'm State Representative John Thompson.
Okay. I'll be right back.
All right.
Sorry, it took a little long, but so there's your license to my card. You're suspended in Minnesota?
No.
That's what the computer says. If it's wrong, you have to deal with the DBS.
Thank you. Why'd you pull me over again, man?
No front plate, and then the way you took off from the light back there.
I'm too old to run from the police, man. You profiled me because you looked me dead in the face and I got a ticket for driving while black. You pulled me over because you saw a black face in this car, brother, and there's nowhere in here I'm taking off with you behind me. You looked at me in this car, and busted U-turn and got behind my car. And that's the reason why you... I know. But what I'm saying is what you're doing is wrong to black men. And you need to stop that. Thank you so much. But this ticket means nothing to me. No. I'm gonna always have a great day. What I'm saying is you would stop racially profiling black men in their cars, sir. Stop doing that. Yes, you were. Bro. You saw a black man driving in this car. It don't make no difference. You pulled me over because you're profiling me. Thank you so much. You need to find
Now, initially, John Thompson was told that he was pulled over because he didn't have a front license plate, which I know if you're not in Minnesota, there's a lot of states that actually don't even require that legally. Right. And when you buy a new vehicle, a lot of new vehicles are not even equipped with the front license plate, which he detailed on his social media saying that was his situation. And so, Ben, Brother Mack, I want to bring you guys in on this. There's a thing called pretextual stops. Someone like Philando Castile actually had been pulled over dozens of times before his fatal accident in Minnesota. I mean, and Dante Wright even, you guys remember Dante Wright was killed the third week into the Chauvin trial here in Minnesota. He was pulled over for having a incense hanging from his rear view mirror. And so a lot of times in Minnesota, they will find the smallest thing. So you pull this man over because he didn't have a front license plate. That is not a reason why someone would be stopped in Edina or any of these Minnetonka white suburbs. You're not pulling over affluent white residents who just bought a car that doesn't have a front license plate. It's just not really a reason why you would get pulled over. So that was for the initial stop. And then he ends up getting a citation for having a suspended license, which leads me to think a lot about, the child support system. Yeah. And the fact that you lose your license when you're not paying child support. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't pay, but I'm just saying if they're not paying, if they're having a hard time paying, is taking their license going to help them drive to their job? And so there's a lot of layers here. And but I'm curious to know from you guys initially what your thoughts are on this case.
I clearly say this, Georgia, to hear Representative Thompson say what he said, as the cop came back to him. There ain't a black man in America who is going to start speeding. And we're always aware. I mean, we gonna see them when they pull up. And we certainly, even if they're going in the opposite direction, the first thing we do is we go into that side view mirror and that rear view mirror just to see if they turn around. And when they do turn around, we know exactly why they turned around. And Representative Thompson could not have said that any clearer. When you saw that black face in this car, you turned around. That was the pretext of what made you turn around. So from that, all of this now escalating into the other aspects of it. But, you know, what we were talking about earlier, we're seeing it manifest itself here. Trust and believe, if they can target Dr. King, you best believe every one of us as black men know that we're very easily the target.
Georgia, before I expound, what position is this brother in or running for again? Help me understand that real quick.
Yeah, he is actually elected. So he is currently
elected,
serving. Yes, he is a state representative for District 67A, I believe.
It's not that I didn't hear you. I just needed you to put that out there again so people could have proper context of the juxtaposition I'm about to make right here. This brother, black people in this country, in order to be state representatives, we have to be perfect. We cannot have a suspended license. We cannot have back child support. We better not have any bad taxes. We better dot every I and cross every T. But if you are a white, mediocre man like Donald Trump, you can have mistresses, you can have you can have your pictures, you can have all kind of indiscretions, and this system will never hold you accountable. But if you are a black man and you got a suspended license, this system will bring down the full force of the government on you. I'm done with this thing out here, man. They playing with us. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
Georgia, I promise you, I don't know if a more eloquent comparison could be made. A representative in the state of Minnesota versus the president of the United States. Brother Dixon, I don't know if you could have put a more adequate comparison that even the blind can see that. It's just powerful, man. Good Lord.
You know, and it's just disheartening because
it is wild. I'm sorry, Georgia. It's wild.
No. I mean, you know, it's disheartening because I feel like we already the amount of black politicians is scarce. And so the few that we do have are being held to this impossible standard. And, you know, when you talked about the whole system coming at him specifically, what I've even seen here is the media, dedicate so many resources to covering this story and to asking questions on before the investigation was even launched, you know, throwing that out there. Oh, he has a Wisconsin license. Is he even a Minnesota resident? Like, that's the headline. You're sensationalizing. You're contributing to pushing him out of this position. And what other black man in this state would be better equipped to fight for police accountability than the friend of Philando Castile, you know? And so you want us to come have a seat at the table, but at the end of the day, how inclusive is it? Because John Thompson is not the only person who, and I thought about that too. There was actually a time my license was suspended and I renewed my license in another state in order. So if I have to drive my child to school, I at least have some type of valid driver license in the case of any emergency, you know? And so when you're put in that position and you're simply doing what you're trying to do, what you have to do, like what other choice are you left with that in that situation? And it also makes me question, and none of the other media outlets have examined the child support process. And really, is it effective to strip fathers of their license? If they're not paying child support, is taking their license away going to make them pay it? Is taking their license away going to help them get to the job in order for them to pay? Like, it doesn't really feel like effective. It feels like you are, it's a domino effect that is further sending someone further into a bad situation, right? And in this case, someone who's actually trying to do something good.
And that Georgia, that is the reason why we're seeing the attack. And you know, I love the fact that you brought in the media. So it is in this entire system. That is why that attack. Trust and believe that if Representative Thompson had a handkerchief on his head and taps on the bottom of his shoes, nobody would be concerned about it. But because they understand the spirit and the nature of this brother to uplift our people, oh yes, he becomes the target. The step and fetching is never the target. It is that strong brother who wants to speak truth to power. He becomes the target.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I know this is definitely a lot of layers, a lot of complexities to this story, so we could talk about it more, but we are on the clock. So that's all that we have time for this morning. Thank you so much for watching. Stay around for more on The Benjamin Dixon Show.
My soul got the same on my necklace.
I could really use a change of scenery. Yeah. Everybody smoking all the greenery. Yeah. Clothes the matches they were handed down to me. But I'm still fly, I know. I'm still fly, let's go.
Good morning. We are getting ready to get started in a moment. We don't have DJ exclusive, but we have this music for you. Stay tuned in. We've got some serious stories that we got to cover. Good morning to everyone in the chat room, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, wherever you're watching. The Benjamin Dixon Show, like it or not, on the clock. We will be right back. Stay tuned.
I'm free. Can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it. I'm young, I'm free. Can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it out. It's your time. Oh. Cheers to all the haters, cause you proved to me that rising to the top was my destiny. And you can see whatever from behind me, but I'm still fly, I know. I'm still fly, let's go. It could all be worse, I could be a hater like you. It could all be worse. Clothes to make the man, but that poison's gonna kill you. From the inside out, it's time to say it with your chest now, say it with your chest now. I'm young, I'm free, can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it. I'm young, I'm free, can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it out. It's your time. Oh, if you're on the bus, say yeah. If you're on the train, say yeah. If you gotta walk, say yeah. Everybody's going somewhere. Young or old, I really don't care. Life has never really been fair.